From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast.
I was in Minnesota. I was doing with them, and I didn't have confidence, and not only that, I couldn't get any products. I'd go out and make recommendations, and the guy said, well, where do I get these things? I don't.
Yeah.
And so I could recommend rock phosphate and potassium sulfate and trace minerals all day long, but there wasn't such a thing on the marketplace. So then I said, what am I doing out here? Farmers go up telling me, so here's what we have, DAP and 0060. What do you want to put on? Some nitrogen. So I said, what am I doing? The only thing I could do is get them from putting on dolomitic lime to high calcium lime. I throw in high calcium. That was the only thing that was being accomplished. So I said, well, that's ridiculous. So I quit. We moved back here in 79. And then I bought a small farm because I wanted to do some of these trials and demonstrations myself. Because it's hard to sell something when you don't necessarily believe in it. You kind of believe somebody else's word, but you haven't really seen it yourself.
Yeah.
That's why it's nice that you got cattle out there. You see all the struggles. You'll see this success. You'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully you still got the shade there yet. So.
No, I don't. They took it away from me. But I actually moved everyone off the farm. So all the cattle got moved to a different farm that we have down the road that has really nice shade.
Yep.
So it has shade in every paddock. So
that's why I said, no, that gives you, like me, that was part of the struggles with BioAg, because I was organic, because you graze cattle. They'll think Acres is a grazing cattle magazine.
Yeah, I know. That's well, everyone thought it was only about crops before. So that one of the complaints was we don't talk about livestock enough.
Yeah. And Paul Detlock did his best he could, and the organic following of it. So then when I came here, I bought a small farm just over the hill here. And then I had plots all over and trying out different calciums and different things. And I stayed home. My wife took a job in town and we had little kids. My nickname was Ma Zimmer because I had two little kids with me, one in diapers. And I stayed home for 2 years, read every book I could, studied everything I could. I was trying to figure this dumb thing out. I was trying to get it down so I could stand on it, as the guy said. Then I had all these parts and pieces. And so then there was some natural farming magazine that was in Wisconsin years ago. And I signed up for it. And I put an ad in there. Well, willing to do some consulting. I needed to have some income. My wife didn't have a very good paying job. And so these two guys contacted me, and they were selling a BD starter, which is for making compost. And they were selling a biological. And they wanted they started a company called BioAg of America. And they wanted, and Ralph and Rita Anglican were from Iowa, and Ralph was kind of the head of it. And they had Art of Natural Farming and Gardening is a book he wrote, Ralph Anglican. And he was really into composting, but minerals. So he was smart enough to recognize they needed minerals besides just putting on compost. So they contacted me. They needed someone that could understand soils and minerals. So then I joined them as a partner. Well, 6 months later, Ralph died. And he had an aneurysm, and he wasn't that old. And so then it was in a tizzy. Well, my brother-in-law was coming back from Saudi Arabia, and he had been working with Aramco, and he was looking to start a business. So I dragged him into the business of, we needed money, and we regrouped it to Midwestern BioAg. Because I said, look, BioAg of America, now I should have kept the name, but it's just a little bigger than we could bite off at the time. And then we had to restructure the people, and then I became the president because Ralph had died. And then Fred, one of my partners, he became sales, and Don, the other partner, became logistics and getting products delivered. And my brother-in-law, he was the financial guy. That was the 4 partners of Midwestern BioAg. And that was like 83 years old. And we started out, we were just consulting, and so we couldn't make a living that way. And so then we couldn't get fertilizer yet. So we released a facility in Northern Illinois and to blend up fertilizers. And that was our start. And that was in the spring. We blended up fertilizers, but then that's a seasonal business. Come fall, they said, what are we going to do? And I said, looks like I got to do dairy nutrition. I was very skilled at dairy nutrition. I'd been doing dairy nutrition in Minnesota. So we had to make it through the winter. So then we started on the dairy farms and on the cattle. And that was kind of, in the first 2 years, we were struggling like every other business struggles, but then after that, for 35 years, we always made a profit. And so we had all independent consultants, and I couldn't hire anybody. We didn't have any money. And we moved to Blue Mountains, and late 80s. Our facilities up here in Wisconsin and bought a whole livestock mining station, converted it to fertilizers. We started getting into trucks and fertilizers, and it was quite an investment.
What was the story where you said you went a couple of years where you only made the interest payments on your debt? Was that during those first couple of years?
Yeah, during those first couple of years, it's all, and interest rates, we're talking now.
Yeah, 80s. So
interest rates 15, 18%. And so I said, even the first meetings I did, I think I mentioned the story at Eastern Coast of Wisconsin. See, the guys that were selling Impro, which was some antibodies from colostrum to feed calves and cows, well, they were into more natural. But they partnered up with us. And so we got, with Impro, that's how we got contact to farms. And on the east part of Wisconsin, by the ocean, north of Watertown, I had a guy that was trying to work with us, and it didn't work out with him. But what he did do is set up a meetings in that winter time. So we didn't have any money. I couldn't even rent the facility to have a bloody meeting. So I charged the farmers to go to the meetings. Well, in those days, everybody had free meetings and free lunches and free hats. No, I'm charging them to go to a meeting. And I thought it was, everybody, it was such a shock to them. And I said to my youth, I will let you buy fertilizer until you attend my 3-day class. I did one a week for 3 weeks in a row. And I had like 25, 30 people in the meeting that just paid enough money so I could rent the facility and give them a lunch. And so some of them are still customers today, or their families are, because it carried on from that. And so they went through the 3-day training. Well, then because I said, if you guys fail, you're going to take me with you. You can't fail. You got to be successful like this thing. If I'm going to be successful, you got to be successful. So that was really what got us there. So we called that our Golden Coast, because that group of farmers, or things like kept BioAg alive in the beginning, but dairy nutrition. And I think I mentioned before, solving problems on dairy farms. There'd be stray voltage, and there'd be dry cow feed problems. Their rations were messed up. Milk machines weren't working right. So we went in there. You just can't. It's like on any farm. You just can't go in there and rotationally graze. You better have, you got other things to fix first. It's nice. You got to earn the right to get there. So we fixed broken farms. Guys don't. Why would farmers switch to us? Some were just skeptical of chemicals, but most of them had problems. Like everything else, why would you switch? Whether economic problems or sick cow problems, and so I had a pretty good team of people that we fixed milk machines, we fixed stray voltage, we set up a dry cow program, and we started growing. And I said, give me your alfalfa and give me your dry cows. And then I put together the minerals. I balanced up the minerals, and so that's how we got survived BioAg.
What would you say during those early years you were doing, differently than a company that would technically be like a competitor? So I'm sure those people had went somewhere else prior to you, or they were getting serviced by another company in some way, but.
Yeah, and everybody was pretty well back in those days. You got to realize that agriculture was in a transition, as I feel it is today. Everybody did dry hay, cob cord, and dikel and trace mineral salt. That was dairy farming. Well, Harvester came along. See, I got a lot of business. I'm in Minnesota. Harvester gave me my business. They put up his big blue silos and big fortunes of money. But Harvester really actually changed agriculture. People got mad at him because they had problems with their structure. And they never fixed it. The problem is the silos leaked. But if you had one that didn't leak, and what they taught you is how to grow quality hay. If you're going to spend $50,000 for silos back in those days, you cut your hay earlier. Then you started making haylage. You didn't make dry hay anymore, and you put up hay. I worked a shell plant. You completely changed how you fed cows, and they were but then that feed wasn't for dry cows. So we had to grow separate feed for the dry cows. That was milk cow feed. So they were the first ones to grow milk cow feed. So it was right in the minutes of transition. So then I came along with, and I already got my experience at Harvester, and I started to understand. I got trained by some really good people at Brookside Laboratory Farms in Ohio, which was Ulbricht's group. And I guess, really good, met some really skilled people I spent 9 years studying dairy nutrition at the university, but I really learned dairy nutrition out in the farms with farmers and with these consultants in Indiana and Ohio, and people that trained me were really good at it. One guy's in New York today. He's quite well-renowned educator, and he was one of my teachers. So why they listened is because of the fact they think there's people were starting to question. All of a sudden, some of these guys would get more milk and doing different things, but then they started having problems if they didn't have a dry cow program or so. What really brought us on forth, I said, give me your alfalfa, give me your dry cow. So I started putting together minerals and feed that specifically fed the group of animals. And in the beginning, when I was Brookside trained, we wanted a calcium product. We need a calcium product. There is no high calcium lime in the state of Wisconsin. I had to haul it from Iowa. or southeastern Minnesota.
Where do you get it from?
Well,
What does calcium come from?
I can get it from Harmony, Minnesota, or I can get it from out in Iowa, central Iowa. Now, the trucking to get it to Wisconsin, we were going up against local dolomitic lime, which selling at that time for $5 a ton. And we were $30 a ton time I got the trucking to get it here. Now, that's a hard sell because they thought lime was lime. At that point in my career, I thought calcium was calcium. Brookside never differentiated, and some people still believe that. So anyway, I started shopping around. How am I going to get people to pay that much for the lime? So I said, the finer the grind, the less I can use. So I went to a meeting in Iowa, and two things transpired from that meeting. It was a breaking point for Midwestern BioAg. I found rock phosphate from Idaho. It was actually called PKZ, and there was no organic in it. It was potassium, phosphorus, and zinc. Now, it was from where they mined rock phosphate in Idaho. And it was a wonderful product. They took it off the market. You know why? It was radioactive. Now, we didn't know that. And nobody which
means what? Like,
it was high in heavy metals, and there's big fences out in Idaho. They got it walled off. It's isolated because you can't use this stuff because of heavy metals, and there was cadmium and all these kind of things that we never had a problem on a single farm. But I mixed that. So now I had another phosphorus source that I needed compared to commercial phosphorus. And we did switch map and did some other things on commercial side. And at that same meeting, I met these guys down there from the Quad Cities and little meeker farms, and they were selling us kiln dust. And it was cement dust. And now there's some really interesting research going on right now. They're doing research in the University of Illinois of putting cement dust, kiln dust, in the soil to sequester carbon. See, it's burnt lime. So if you burn lime, you see calcium carbonate's got carbon in it. So it's 12 or 14% carbon. So if you burn it, you get calcium oxide and calcium hydroxide. Now, it's not approved organically because of stupid rules from 100 years ago, because they said it was caustic. But we hydrated it, added water to it, and we added sulfur because it's got a high pH that was caustic. So we started processing it, and then I was quite well trained that you better have boron. If you're going to put calcium on, boron is really getting a lot of attention lately. You better put some boron on. We aren't using enough boron. Boron's huge for your health and for the plant health and for everybody else. And so I started mixing boron with it, and now it's fine ground. It had sulfur in it, it had potassium in it, and we added boron to it. We could put on less per acre, and that justified the trucking from Quad Cities. And so we called it BioCal. Now, at that point in my life, I still thought calcium was calcium. And then we started to realize that lime is made for low pH soils. The acidity of the soil breaks the calcium carbonate down, and the carbonate neutralizes the acidity, and you get free calcium. What if the pH is neutral? What if it's high pH? It's insoluble. Now, there's a lot of people still recommend it. You better have good biology, but it's real slow to break down. And Don Schaefer was a really good friend of mine, and he wrote a couple of books about acres. I learned a lot from Don, and he was the one that really came along and talking about, a ton of lime is only 5 pounds of soluble calcium. So we had hydrated lime, and we got 150 pounds of soluble calcium. And so, oh my gosh, it did change. Hey, it still does. It's one of our signature products, and we still make it. And now we make an organic version of it. The organic version of it is taking powder fine calcium sources, gypsum, high calcium lime, and add humates. Humates kind of 3-4 pH. You put lime in low pHs, you get available calcium. So the organic cal is just adding acidity to lime and making a available calcium source. Highly soluble calcium. So most guys have been liming and their pHs were neutral. I was after the calcium. And then we started really getting response on, hey, that's the article I just wrote about the big four that I sent to Paul also, was about, they're talking, I had a Zoom meeting tomorrow with Dan Kittrick about his nutrient-dense and nutrient-rich foods. And I really agree that we lost our nutritional value of foods, but calcium, I came along with the phrases in that calcium's a trucker of all, and biocal's and boron's a steering wheel. Because higher the calcium uptake, we did a study on 16,000 feed samples, Dairyland Lab at the time, and picked out 300 really good customers of mine and compared them to 16,000 regular farms that were doing feed tests. And, we had a 50% to 47% increase in calcium uptake. Now, we never said, if your pH is fine, you're getting enough calcium. That wasn't true. And putting on lime that's insoluble didn't do the result. But the BioCal was soluble calcium and drove the calcium up. Phosphorus went up, magnesium went up, sulfur went up. All the other minerals went up. The article I just wrote for Acres is about, the guy from California, name skips my mind right now. He wrote an article about the Big Four. And this isn't a rebuttal. I mean, he did a good job. I have respect for what he writes. He writes all the time in your magazine. He just got an article last issue. But he's looking at the minerals in the soil. I looked at the minerals in the plant. Two different things. We got high magnesium soils in Wisconsin, most places, our dolomitic limestone soil, and low magnesium plant and magnesium uptake. So my Big Four was calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and boron. You get those four things really high in crop or any plant. I call them indicator minerals. They get really high, and then that's an indicator that you can have a higher level of nutrition, higher value. So when we start putting our BioCal on, all of a sudden the minerals come up in the hay. Now, it's really interesting. So now we legally can't do it anymore. In those days, I could do a lot of things. That's illegal. I go to a farmer and say, why are you feeding all these minerals to your cows? I said, minerals are only about 40% usable. If I put the minerals in your feed, and it's a real high digestible feed, they're 95% usable. So why would I balance the ration the same? So the minute we started getting minerals up into their feed, we started backing away from the minerals we fed their cows with very much success. And the reason it got stopped is because if I wrote that on a piece of paper, I could now be sued because everybody's got their computer rations. I'd end up in court. So now everybody's scared to write on a piece of paper. So I tell the farmers today, I still tell them, once you start getting more mineralized feeds or foods, if it was in your food, you wouldn't have to take supplements. But it's not in our foods. So you better take supplements. So I said, we get in it. Once I get your feeds to start to change, I get more mineral uptake in your feed, and that's more usable. And I got more digestibility because we get better quality feeds. You can back off what you feed your cows. We cut mineral levels in half. Well, Bob Schmitnick was from Arcadia, Wisconsin, and Paul Getloff was his veterinarian. That's how Paul got into this business. And boy, he went around their farm after farm. He would preach to them, instead of spending $1,000, $2,000 a ton for minerals, when you can put on a $100 a ton product on your hay and change your hay, it would make a lot of sense. And that's how I got farmers. And who changed their feed? So the nutrient density, so Dan Kittrick's are trying to get something we can measure nutrient density in beef. I said, there's 4,000 compounds. That's that guy, he spoke at Acres. He's from Iowa. He's down at Fairfield, Iowa. Professor guy, John, I can't think of his name either right now, but
John Wong.
No, not John Wong. Wong's from Ohio. This is he's written in the magazine for it. I did some testing. It's 4,000 compounds they test, $1,000 to do a beet dead. I do a mineral analysis up a green and try to find some differences. What we got to find is indicator minerals. We can't test 4,000 compounds. Dan Kittrick would go crazy. And he said there's 700 entries just to measure the difference between the potato and the carrot. So we can't measure 4,000 compounds. But my indicators, so in California, they wrote the article on the Big Four. He said, I didn't include magnesium in the Big Four because our soils are already high in magnesium. I put it silica instead. And I said, whoa, our soils are higher in magnesium also. That's the article I just sent to Paul. It's not a rebuttal to it, but it's a clarification of what I looked at and what he's looking at. Just because they're in the soil, you can have high phosphorus soils and crops starved of phosphorus. If you don't have biology, phosphorus is a biological mineral, and it takes mycorrhizin. It takes calcium to drive up the uptake of phosphorus. You've got to have. That's why my Big Four are what goes into the plant. So if I had a piece of equipment and I went to the grocery store, I could measure calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and boron. If I can, maybe some others you can throw it in there. Like he wanted silica in there, and I'm not opposed to that. If those minerals went higher into a forage for cows perform better, feeds healthier, better quality from the feeds. We don't have the insect and disease problems. And that exactly can work for humans. So instead of going after 4,000 compounds, let's just find a few that are indicators. Calcium, phosphorus, magnesium are three major, and boron are the four major ones.
So calcium was what set you in a different place or put you in a different place. So where did you get the ideas that you formed from about calcium? Was it
Albrecht papers and Brookside about calcium was misunderstood. But see, and the Brookside training I had in those days, I think it's still done today. And I think it's done with people that write books. And for your company out here, put calcium with calcium. Mm-hmm. I was in South Africa and very renowned, mentioned names here, of a professor, a consultant. And he recommended on some soil samples in South Africa, 12 times high CECs, heavy soils. See, the way you take a soil, because sand soil, I can change it with a ton. Heavy soils, he recommended 12 tons of high calcium lime on a soil with an 8 pH. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, why don't we put on a soluble calcium source, Cape Town, South Africa, and I wanted to put on a ton on these heavy soils, and they put on 2 tons. Radically changed farms. I didn't need 12 tons. With 12 tons, what happens? You got all that reserve out there. Calcium becomes a dominant mineral, and it's insoluble. It might take 20 years to break some of those pieces down. So gypsum then is, we always use the phrase is, so I got 3 calcium sources, the bird hydrated lime. I use liquid sources too, some of them. I've got lime, high calcium lime. I got my biocalc, high calcium, and I got gypsum. Now, gypsum is designed or made in fits, soils that have got a real, kind of a neutral pH, real high in magnesium and marginal in calcium. Now, we used to use the story that gypsum. It gyps you by the fact that you put it on a low pH soil, or you put it on where it doesn't hold low magnesium soil, and it doesn't fit. And it's not going to give you results. You wasted your money. So you got to find the calcium source that fits your farm.
What about Albrecht did people not like? Like, what was the reason why he got forced out of the university system?
Because it offended people when we started talking calcium. Because you got to realize that the soil science departments haven't changed in 75 years since I've been involved. They're still the same. They haven't changed a bit. And so they lime to a certain pH and buy the cheaper sources of NPK. That fertilizer recommendations, and that has not changed in 75 years. So Albrecht comes along and talks about balance. So they tried to do research at the university. So they fully tried to set up a balance that would match Albrecht's ideal balance numbers. Now, those were done in pot studies, everything else. So they blamed him for spending his effort, and they couldn't find any yield advantage by doing it. And I said, wait, what was that? I said, why would you try to make a soil? You got to deal with what you got. If I got a high magnesium soil, wouldn't it make it stupid to add more magnesium because it competes with potassium and my ground gets harder and tighter. So his idea, they attacked him over this balance. They did all kinds of research to prove the balance didn't give better yields. But what they did was they put on optimum levels of fertilizer, and all they did was try to change the balance. Once your balance is in place, I could use less fertilizer, and I'll have a healthier crop. I don't need biotechnology, insecticides, fungicides, or pesticides. And that part they missed. So he got attacked because he was going after the soil science departments, and rightfully so. And they still need to be gone after. But now it's softened because they're the agroecology people, all the other ones. It isn't the soil science. There's some really good soil scientists, but they're not the ones that are changing agriculture. It's the people out in the field doing the work, and other vendors are looking at environmental things and runoff and soil health. That's not coming from soil science departments. That's coming from somewhere else. Other people. So Albrecht got attacked over the soil balance, but he was spot on, and it's still spot on, except that I said, we're not trying to make a pretty soil test. They kept saying, Albrecht's trying to make a pretty soil test. No, they missed the point. He's trying to address deficiencies and excesses. That's why you take a soil. If you already got enough magnesium and your pH is low, you certainly wouldn't want to put on dolomitic lime and add more magnesium. Because now you're just, first of all, there's only 20% calcium in a dolomitic lime. There's 30% calcium in a high calcium lime. So I'm wanting more calcium. High calcium lime's a better buy if I got a low pH. But I got to chuck it. So they misunderstood the whole thing. So I said, we're just trying to address, if I already got too much of something, why would I add more? Soil testing is about measuring what's short and adding it. If you got too much, don't add any more. And that's the Albrecht system. And every lab that I know on this planet does Albrecht system and don't know it. They all take a soil test, and they tell you this is low and this is high. And if you follow their advice from the labs, even the University of Wisconsin lab, follow their advice and add what's short and don't add what you got too much of already, you'll have balanced your soil, exactly like Albrecht said.
So you owning the amendments and owning the fertilizer side, I mean, you're essentially telling people not to use as much of your product.
That was part of my trouble with this now. It's really changing. Right now, BioAg is partnering with people all over the countryside with some of our products that are pretty unique to us. In the old days, I stirred up enough interest and see if I take a customer away from somebody here, and he's a pretty big customer, and he's doing pretty successful and pretty renowned in the community. People he had been doing business with might be relatives or cousins or friends, go to the same churches. They're going to say, well, you better look out for that guy, that Zimmer. He's really kind of way out there in left field. And so they would always attack me. So I went to the co-ops. I said, why don't you work with us? And I said, they got pretty interested. And then I said to them, here's one, this one's like, Brown, are you willing to stand up in front of your farmers and say, look, in the next 5 years, we got a new plan on your fertilizers. We're going to cut your fertilizer use down. We're going to get rid of drop your insecticides and your fungicides, get those much lower, and get your herbicides much lower. We're going to reduce all those unnecessary inputs. In those days, there wasn't biotechnology, but now it's let's get rid of that. How do they make a farm better? And what they'd say to me, how do we make a living? We make our living selling those things. That's why I couldn't do business with them. But now, you got to realize that in the old days, they made a lot of money on chemicals. Well, now you can buy it from China really cheap, and there's no money left in chemicals. They used to make money on NPK fertilizers. Now, people sell direct from farms. I was in Mexico. Do you realize that fish farmers in Mexico are buying their fertilizer direct from China, right to their farms? No in-between men whatsoever. Very little money in commercial fertilizers anymore. Now, service. Well, they can't find the help when they don't have enough people to do the service they was off. They're struggling. We sold our facilities, BioAg facilities in Northern Illinois, to our local co-op fertilizer company. And they are buying a lot of fertilizer. They got 7 or 8 facilities they're trying to turn they got to figure out how to make money at this business. And so now that's why I was scattered all over 3 states. I didn't have the infrastructure in a local community. We were headquartered in Blue Mountains, but we got facilities in Michigan and in Iowa and Illinois and Minnesota. And so I would go to where farms are receptive. We had to truck more fertilizer, but I didn't have a facility built that I had to justify. We got business big enough, we put a facility up. Don't get me wrong, but see, that's what the trouble was with the fertilizer industry. You got to figure out how to make a living at this thing. So I think they're going to get forced to, or maybe why not give education, cover crops? So that's why they're that model, those facilities out in Illinois. And we just had a meeting here just 2 weeks ago here in Wisconsin. There's an agronomist from Nebraska. We work with a co-op in Nebraska because the farmers should go to the co-op. If you farm 10,000 acres, so you're a big farmer in Nebraska, you go to a local fertilizer company and say, I want to have Midwestern BioAg trace mineral blanks to your fertilizer, to my fertilizers. Are they going to say no? Absolutely not. They're not going to take a risk of losing a 10,000 acre farm because they'll say, I'll just go to somebody else if you won't do it. So the farmers are the ones that are putting the pressure on the fertilizer people to make some changes. The guy that used to be the agronomist in Nebraska is now in Wisconsin. So there's 2 co-ops here in Wisconsin and now going to merge with us. Now, QLF, you were just there in Chitwood, and their liquid molasses fertilizers and their liquid fertilizer, they're setting up, they work with fertilizer companies all over. Everybody's trying to figure out a way to survive. So the change in agriculture is slow, but it's taking place, and it's going to start from the bottom up. The environmentalists are going to pressure it. The consumer's going to pressure it. Erosion, this year, with all the rain and the unhealthy soil. I had all those meetings on soil health that we're doing out here, and I still keep doing it. That's what's going to change agriculture, not the soil science departments. They're not going to.
What describe like the fertilizer that gets labeled as more chemistry type farming versus the fertilizer where you are more biologically?
Yes. So in the old days, my grandfather bought a fertilizer on NPK called a 3-12-12. My dad got it in 6-24-24. Today, it's a 9-23-30. So fertilizer was sold on price and solubility, never performance. The 3-12-12 had more natural mine materials in it. It wasn't all solid. It had sulfur in it. It was a more balanced fertilizer. 6-24-24, see, you start raising the numbers. So if we're all 3 in the fertilizer,
What do the numbers mean?
just means soluble NPK. That's all they're selling it based on. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So that was what the fertilizer industry became, was selling higher levels of solubility, never performance. And not only that, it's the dumbest idea man ever came up with. Put all your nutrients in solution, then wonder how they get into water. Oh, how did they get in my water? What did you just do? You put them in solution. They're soluble. And so the industry then started going after the cheapest, most soluble stuff, but they're also harsh. We got nitrogen sources, we got phosphorus sources, DAP and MAP. They're quite soluble. And just our nitrogen sources are all fairly soluble. Where as the movement today, then I got involved with it with Brookside Training and with Don Schrieffer. Some of his books, From the Soil Up, was really an education. See, Don Schrieffer was a corn and soybean specialist from Indiana. I was a dairy nutrition guy from Wisconsin. So I did dairy cows, and he did corn and beans. When he died in 1999, guess what? We took over a lot of corn and bean farms because he was the guy that had the knowledge. He worked with the guys in Michigan. I learned a lot from Don, and he kept talking about sources and performance and the zone of updraft and row fertilizers. And oh, it's quite incredible. He was way ahead of his time, which I've been accused of myself on the other end, because neither one of us we were both ag teachers. Neither one of us came from the chemistry industry. And so I started looking at, I put together what I call the fertilizer formula. Why would I want everything to be soluble? I use the analysis because I'm a dairy nutrition guy. You got a calf born in May. Go out to the barn, little Holstein calf, go out to the barn and lay all the feed for the next 4 months in front of it. You do that to your crop, you don't think anything of it. I see you dump all your fertilizer on the spray, the seed's not even on the ground yet. You got all your nitrogen, all your chemicals, all your fertilizer, don't even go. Will they leach there? Will they tie up? And then you say, we know how much nitrogen it takes to grow corn. We know how much phosphorus. That's like saying we know how many minerals we got to feed the cow. Well, that's more complex than that. We know that all those minerals in the ocean, we do not need to grow corn because they're down there. We don't have those. They eroded and they got away. What about this year? All the erosion, all the leaching, all the runoff. Obviously, what does it take to grow a good crop? So I started saying, well, why don't we balance the soluble and slow release? Why would I want it all soluble? I want some soluble to get it started. I can use some liquids and things to get it out of the ground. Let's use let's balance the soluble and slow release. And I said, why don't we cut down our salts and ammonias? So rock phosphate, and I could add some rock phosphate to some commercial phosphates. We use MAP because I also wanted instead of having your pH of your soils lower, like a lot of people are struggling, they go, I got to have a 6.5 pH. First of all, I want it to be 7. I'm sorry. The soil biology wants it to be 7. You try to go organic farming and you try to keep your pHs down. It's impossible. Commercial fertilizers would drive the pH down. So
why do they want it at 6.5?
Because at the low pH, the mineral availability is higher. If your soil is dead, it's hard as a rock. What if it's got a lot of biology, a lot of earth, a lot of life, and your biology overpowers your chemistry any day? So I wanted my fertilizer to have a low pH, not the soil. Why not have? So we made low pH fertilizers like MAP instead of DAP. MAP's got a 5 pH, DAP's got a 9 pH. Why not use MAP? So then we started using things like humates, which had a 3-4 pH, and started mixing with the fertilizer. We started at ammonium sulfate was another sulfur was a nitrogen source, but ammonium sulfate is 24% sulfur, 21% nitrogen. 24. I get these numbers mixed up. Anyway, in the old days, they called it nitrogen 45, 75 years ago, because if you add the sulfur and the nitrogen together, it's almost a similar numbers to urea. But you can replace part of your nitrogen with sulfur. So I started to study this fertilizer industry with a lot of help from a lot of people and say, ammonium sulfate's got a low pH. And there's a lot of research from Midwest labs. You put that down the zone and get that pH in the root zone lower, you get a better mineral uptake by your fertilizer use than to place them out. So then I took the phosphorus, I make rock phosphate with it, and then we added humates to it to get those more available. So we had some soluble and some slow release. And then potassium sources. Everything was potassium chloride, salt fertilizer. And I'm not opposed to a little bit of chloride, but boy, these guys are putting out, you need about 40 pounds of chloride to grow a bumper crop of anything you want to grow. Well, potassium chloride is 47% chloride. So 100 pounds an acre, you've exceeded your chloride needs. Plus, you're feeding salt to your dairy cows if you're a dairy farmer. So you got unbelievable amount of salts out here going on. So potassium sulfate. In the old days, it was $100 a ton more than potassium chloride. We were the biggest distributors of potassium sulfate in the Midwest. We were the distributors at one time. Well, now it's more than double the price. There's such a demand for it. And I kept arguing. I said, if you want to change agriculture, why don't we get the potassium sulfate price down to potassium chloride? And he said, because we can't make enough of it. And now, now they're fighting over it. If you're growing tomatoes, especially crops in California, vegetable crops, they're all going to potassium sulfate. So we got 3 potassium sources: the potassium chloride, the salt, potassium sulfate, and K-Mag, potassium magnesium sulfate. Now, if you look down just on potassium sources, these 2 are more expensive. So, but let's say I went to potato farmers, and I'd say they putting on 500-600 pounds of potassium chloride. And I said, why don't we take 100 pounds of potassium chloride, 100 pounds of potassium sulfate, and 100 pounds of K-Mag? I now have a timed release because the salt is instantly in solution. Your salt shaker, put it in a glass of water and see how fast you can get it to your mouth before it's soluble. Instantly. Potassium sulfate takes probably a week. K-Mag probably takes a month. So now I've got a time release potassium sulfate, not all that salt. So those are the sources I started searching out. And then trace minerals. You can buy cheap oxide trace minerals. They're insoluble. So we took trace minerals and we added humates. And we made a blend of trace minerals acidic, and we used sulfate trace minerals. And we made a homogenized blend, so if you're only putting a pound of something per acre, you know how many BBs that is if you look at that. If you got to mix with a fertilizer, that's a BB about every 2 foot down the corn row. If you're putting 200 pounds, a couple pounds of zinc per acre, zinc sulfate. So we made homogenized blends so every BB's got the same analysis for better distribution and made it acidic. So we looked at trying to get more efficiency out of fertilizer. That's why we can reduce the numbers. So now we fight the industry because they say, oh, well, you know how much potassium it takes or how much phosphorus it takes. But we got it. So that's why there's two things. I said, if I was going to change the name of Midwestern Bio, if I could start over, I would focus on soil health and soil fertility. Soil health is getting the biology because the minerals need to be in the carbon biological cycle. Minerals are a huge, big part of it. With pushing movement we got going on today about soil health and regenerative ag, they ignore minerals, and that's a mistake. They're going to come to regret that someday. The only reason it works, I tell everybody, I want to go to the farm that wouldn't put in fertilizer because I got to be sure you can't over. You've been putting 200 pounds of corn fertilizers every year, potassium chloride, and 100 pounds of commercial phosphorus every year upon year after year after year. And how much of that they actually get to use. Plus they use starters, they way overdo the use of it. So they got a buildup going on in their soils. So regenerative ag is then, oh, let's grow some cover crops. Let's cut down it. Let's tap into our reserve. What if you go to a farm that you got some of that land that doesn't have a reserve?
Yeah.
You got this low number. So you bought a farm that you're going to have some input if you want to really change the soil because you don't have a reserve. That was coming out of CRP. I saw the numbers. They're terrible.
It wasn't CRP. It was
haymaking.
No, it was a corn bean rotation.
It was.
Yeah.
It was still terribly low soil.
Well, I could see it. It was rented, so maybe they weren't
doing it. They were kind of farm that can buy a lot of inputs. It wasn't owned. And then the other thing is if the guy was making any kind of hay, you take off a lot of organic matter and minerals. Boy, oh boy, you can really mine the soil out really fast by selling hay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. So that's why I started looking at that whole fertilizer issue. We changed our calcium sources. We looked at different fertilizers. So I lowered the pH. We had a balance of all nutrients. I didn't want it all soluble. I wanted to balance soluble to slow release. I wanted to make sure that they were earth biologically friendly, the materials we added. And that became our fertilizer blends. But see, I would go up 9-23-30 was the commercial fertilizer. We had a 10-9-10. Now, if you're a farmer, I'm not getting as much for my money. I said, we had them trials. We had to prove to them that our potassium sources, even though there were lower percentages, I could get much more efficiency, bigger, better root system, double your root system, cut your fertilizer water in half. And that's all these biologists, all they're talking about today. 30 years ago, a major seed corn company stood up at a meeting I attended and said, we are going to breed corn with a smaller root system because it takes nutrients to grow roots. It takes energy. Oh my gosh, don't want to step backwards. There's less roots in the soil, then your soils go downhill because there's no organic matter to feed the next generation. So now everyone's grow bigger root systems. And that's how we got to biologic in the first place.
I think with regenerative agriculture too, have you noticed this and I was guilty of this, where fertilizer almost has this like negative name.
Yep.
I never understood that there was, natural, like good fertilizers.
And so we can't, come on, we know enough nowadays that nutrients are valuable. Now they might want to use liquids. Liquids I could use a foliar or a liquid or two, somewhat more efficient. I can use a little starter pop-up to get out of the ground. But you need to have a good quality driver. You can't change pH with a gallon. You're not going to change your soils with a few gallons or something. That's a dry blend to get. And you can put manures on, and we make fertilizers on the back of an anaerobic digester. So I got biology and carbon with my fertilizers. So soil health, then we got all the things determined on soil health. And so I rewrote the rules on soil health. Now it says, soil health is the capacity to function. And I added the word without intervention. If you got to add all this stuff to get the function, then it's obviously not working very well. And then I also went out there and they had, they got a lot of really good things. I'm not criticizing soil health, but you got to recognize that NRCS and all these government programs, they cannot go up against the university soil science departments. They cannot mention minerals. They might say, oh gosh, Midwestern BioAg, we better look at the mineral sources. They got a lot better quality mineral sources and they got a difference in mineral sources. They'll be attacked by every university soil science department in this countryside. So they can't focus. But they got on their diversity and can't have a crust on the ground and in minimum disturbance and all the living roots in the soil all the time. Perfect. All those are perfect. I added in there minerals. And one of the two major minerals you want to do if you want to get soil healthy, you better do phosphorus and calcium. Phosphorus is a mineral. Phosphorus uptake radically changes plants. Radically. Phosphorus is the good guy. Everybody's so scared of phosphorus now because you can't put it up. put a commercial source that ties up in 2 weeks and put it on top of the ground on hard dead soil, where do you think it ends up? In the lakes, just like manure. Force them to go no-till on the ground as hard as this tabletop. And they can't kill it. They got to lay it on, even if it's a hillside. The strips are all gone. We took those out. And then wonder how it gets into the streams. Well, the ground is dead. So soil health is valuable, but soil health. That's why that exorcist at John Lenden's 1,000 Farm Challenge, our water infiltration is about double anybody else's. It's off the charts. So we got our extreme farming system, 1 year soil building and 1 year crops. But water infiltration is huge. That should be one of the major soil measures. Water's got to soak in the ground. And that means good, loose soil that's got a lot of biology and a lot of organic matter in it. Soil fertility. So soil health and soil fertility ought to be the two focuses of any farm. So we know what it takes to make healthy soil. Don't throw out the minerals. And then we also know soil fertility is the exchange of minerals. It's not about upping them on. It's getting them up into the plant. And so the exchange of minerals and through a carbon biological cycle, it's hard to beat. In other words, if they're in plants, if I grow a cover crop and those minerals are now in that plant, when that plant digests down, it's a time-release fertilizer source. Now, there's been a lot of mistakes made on cover crops. This whole concept, we got to be fungal dominated. Which I have my balance out here, and I've been at it long enough, and I've been studied more than most. I'll take on my battles with anybody. Oh, we got to know this. We got to get our phosphorus low. Was a ban out here. And, this whole thing about soil fertility is people don't really understand this change of minerals. So this, another one is just bacteria fungal dominated. We got to be fungal dominated. Now, who in the world's idea was that? Fungal dominated is nice for woods. Fungal dominated is nice for trees. If the plant of the new stuff, and you've got an article you did for Jerry Hatt, there's 2 more papers coming out on liquid carbon. Christine Jones and Alan Vilo, and he lives just down the road. He's a good friend of mine. And this liquid carbon, maybe putting complex carbons in the soil is not a way to build organic. Maybe having plants exudating. Our above ground cover crops put 1,000 pounds of sugar every acre on every ground. Just measuring the sugar above ground 1 week. Put the salt plant back in the soil. How much is that photosynthesizing? We know that 1/3 to 1/2, depending on health of the soil and health of the plant, might only be 10% for some people, of the exudates produced some photosynthesis is going back in the soil to feed the soil land. And what are they? Sugars. If the plant is feeding bacteria and wants to be bacteria dominated, why would you want to be fungal dominated? And now the research says that I add a complex carbon to my soil. What's the only thing I add to my soil that doesn't break down? Biochar. All the rest of them are still digested. They may be like composting. You've digested the easy stuff out of it, and it's still going to break down to humus, which might only be 10% of the compost. And so biochar is the only thing stable. So if it's still breaking down by the biology, it's not humus, but biochar is the only stable carbon source. So the liquid carbon goes in the soil, feeds the bacteria. The plant gets nutrients from feeding bacteria, gets its nitrogen. Bacteria have a real fast turnover. They're really high soluble carbons. That's what the plant exudates are. And that'll be in that article I just sent you guys. I talk about that. Those exudates there are then feeding the bacteria, and then they only live a short while. And guess what? The fungus and all the other people eat the bacteria. And then if there's an excessive amount of energy going into the soil, it's about energy in and energy out. And that's this article of Hatfield. If there's extra energy going into the soil, then it's like feeding your steers extra corn. They're going to get fat. They store it. What do you think the soil does? They store it in complex carbons. You don't need to add a complex carbon. That gets just digested. What if the bugs and the organisms in the soil are going to make their own complex? They put a reserve out there for bad times. Because we know this year we got our bad times. And so that's organic matter, humus buildup. It's for bad times. And the bugs do that. And they store that. Let them do it. Just feed them. And so that change is now taking place. So there's a lot of wonderful things happening in my career, my lifetime, at least that I understand. So this whole system is, so if you're focused on soil and soil fertility, is get those high numbers in the plant, you will now have nutrient-dense food. And we all know the nutrient density of our foods has gone way down because we don't have healthy soil. We have not done it. A balanced minerals and have a highly exchangeable system where the minerals need to come through a carbon biological cycle. And that's why the cover crops and the earthworms and the compost, all those things, get your minerals in a carbon biological. We manufacture minerals with carbon in. Now there'd be 2.
So what is, I guess your farm here and what your son's doing is a good example of this. What type of what's the economic side of this year where corn prices are the lowest they've been in a long time? Was he able to use then less fertilizer? Or
Yes, no, it's just not fair to say what this farmer has done. See, because we've been here for 25 years on some of this land. My son bought his first farm when he was 16 years old, and he's now 46, 30 years. Howard Buffett always said you got 40 chances. My son's used up 30. He's only 46 years old. But he started really young. Most farmers don't get, and he owned them. So he wasn't working for me. So he put him in a different position because now his skin on the deep. So we used to put on our soil test. I grunted down salt. We put a lot of calcium on, a lot of BioAg. We've really raised our calcium levels really high. Actually, right now, if you took a soil test on this farm and I show my meetings, what do we have left to add? And the answer is, so now, once my soils are at that balance, and what are we exporting? Either your farmer's importing or exporting. We sell corn grade and we sell rye seed. We don't sell hay. We don't sell any complex carbons. And we grow all those cover crops. We put all that biomass. Everything goes back in the soil. So our inputs are really low. Now, we spent a lot of money fixing. For 20 years, I put 200 pounds of potassium sulfate on every year and 50 pounds of emergent nitration in the land. For 25 years. Do you realize the reserve I got out there? Our potassium levels always kept, when we had dairy farm, we made all that hay. You see, an organic dairy farmer's got an issue. We had 100 acres of creek bottom pasture the cows grazed. Where do you think the manure ended up?
Yeah, the nutrients were in the creek bottom.
Where the cows are grazing. And I'm making hay over here and feeding the cows, and they're pasturing it down there. So just because you're an organic dairy farm does not mean you have a very good nutrient management plan. We used to milk 300 cows, understand it really, really well. So we kept having to put nutrients out on the fields. And our soil test, our feed tests were never high in potassium, and our soils were always low. But now that cows are gone, and now we're growing all these cover crops, and we're changing how we farm, and our potassium levels are now doubled on our soils. And now doubled. Our inputs right today, two things, sulfur and boron. We sell our corn to a poultry farm here just 10 miles away. That's organic. And so we get back the manure. That's part of the deal. So even the corn, I got a list of how many nutrients leave our farm with corn and with exporting and importing, how much is leaving. We get that manure back. And then we bale up the hay from our pastures, that 100 acres of creek bottom pasture. We bale that up, and that's the base for our compost. I want those nutrients back that I put out there for 30 years.
Yeah.
So now we're adding a poultry to it. And then we add sulfur and boron to it. And now I got them in that carbon to biological cycle. Now, I've been sulfur and boron, they're anions. They're like nitrogen. See, I can't grow sulfur and I can't grow boron, but I can grow nitrogen. Our cover crops put in 400 units in from our cover crops. Our farmer is really interesting this year. We see some really yellow, poor-looking corn. You know what that was? From the drought last year. Our sandy knolls, our light soil, the cover crop died. The cover crop died, and this year the corn looks awful. All this rain. You see, so our fields look really, spotty, real uneven. It's because where the cover crop died last year. You look out here now, the cover crops are absolutely gorgeous. All the rain we got this year. We only harvested about half our rye this year. First of all, we had changes at county estimate. All those storms took our rye down. We planted our rye thing, and all this rain, our clovers and stuff overpowered our rye, and the rye is late. The wind broke it down, and it's a real little light seed anyway, so we're just putting her back on the fields. So I'm going to barely have enough rye to meet our demands this year because we sell rye for seed, and I got a nice contract for food grade rye too. So rye doesn't make us any money. So we just have trouble. My son's surviving this year, so I don't put he does not need an operating loan. No, last year he had a good year. It was a drought, but he had insurance, so he bought a semi-load of sulfur and a whole bunch of boron. Now that's sitting in the shed, and we'll mix it in the compost coming up here next week. We'll start making compost. He's just finished drying now. We'll make compost. We'll spread the compost in September. So we'll start turning the compost, and we'll add the sulfur and the boron to it. So it's in a covered biological cycle. Because if we monitor the soils and we monitor the plants, we cannot get enough sulfur. And sulfur is necessary for boron uptake, and sulfur it makes complete proteins. You want to have insect and disease problem, skimp on sulfur. I did my graduate work on methionine, which is a sulfur-containing amino acid. If sulfur is low, you cannot make a complete protein. And chewing and biting insects eat plants with incomplete proteins. So if I make a complete protein, and we can do that out here, so I can grow nitrogen, but I can't grow sulfur, and I can't grow boron. And we're really low on both those. And now we've got some areas. I added up there's a lot of rumbling going on out here, and boron's a good guy, not only for your health, but what are the main supplements humans ought to take? Magnesium, boron, probably vitamin D, because everyone wants to protect themselves from the sun, and so now we need to take vitamin D. Major supplements you ought to have in your diet. Now, boron's really short, so there's people, we know we put a pound of boron, and then on the East Coast, because it rains more and they get lighter soils, we put a pound and a half of boron pick. In the Midwest, a pound, and the Western United States, a half a pound, because it doesn't rain out there and they get heavy soils. Now, we're putting on 2 pounds of boron here, and we still have a hard time raising the numbers. On my gardens, I got up this, my salt test now, so I got 6 parts per million of boron. Huge. No, we're target 2. My garden's beautiful. So boron is energy uptake, it's calcium uptake, it's energy translocation within a plant. It's necessary for photosynthesis. So I talk about if you focus on soil health and soil fertility, one more thing you need to focus on: photosynthesis. How to bigger, healthier leaves. See, if you got a disease sick plant and it's plugged up and can't photosynthesize, magnesium is like iron is in the middle of our blood, hemoglobin, in the middle of the plant for photosynthesis. Their exudates, their sugars, it's magnesium is photosynthesis. So I got to get magnesium uptake. And there's where sulfur is necessary. Make Epsom salts. I got enough magnesium in my soil. So there's another argument I have with people. They want to get your magnesium down to 12%. They say, you know what you do? You know, 12%, you're limited on sulfur input. I put on 1,700 pounds of sulfur per acre through gypsum over 4 years to try to lower magnesium. I don't want to get if I get between 15 and 20% magnesium, we started at 30. If I can get it down to 15 to 20%, I don't want to get it down to 12, because at 12, I'm limited on sulfur use. See, if I add sulfur to soils that are high in magnesium, I make Epsom salt. So what interferes with magnesium there? Why is magnesium such a critical mineral? Because potassium and magnesium are on a teeter-totter. These guys are putting on commercial potassium, and that now drives down magnesium uptake. And not only that, we got all that chloride out there might interfere with biology, and the chloride takes out calcium chloride, but it also takes out magnesium chloride. So I'm having a hard time getting available magnesium uptake. So I got to watch my potassium levels. That's why I got to get more efficient with it, use different sources, and have them time released. And I got to make sure I got enough sulfur, because there's no sulfur coming out of the air like it used to. There's some, but not near enough. I got to add that sulfur and better watch your magnesium uptake.
Have you ever experimented with the different types of cover crops that can pull the minerals up out of the soil? Like targeted certain cover crops that would then...
Yes, I have. And that's actually a really good idea out here. But here's the problem for us. The problem is right now, because of all this wet, we got a bunch of wet holes. And where our rye went down, we killed on a bunch of some of our cover crop, clover.
Mm-hmm.
See, my son was he farmed alone on 1,500 acres, don't forget. So he's really minimalist on work. Minimalist on trips across the field. He's really low range. So now I said, I could plant my rye in the fall after corn. In November, we plant rye. We plant lower rates of rye than other people do. And that might be why we got, look out here, you can see some pictures of my rye out here. Oh my gosh, it just took over our clover. So then in the spring, we frost seed clover. See, in the first week in March. This year he did it in February, and that was probably a mistake, because now the clover got too big on us. I overpowered the rye. I could have waited till the 10th of March and put my clover on. So now we spent 15 pounds of clover on frozen ground, or March, it might not be frozen anymore, but it rains and it's moisture. We never have it. If you plant your rye too thick and it lodges, it kills your clover. So we're interested in the clover for the corn. We make money on corn, not rye.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a market for it all. And so then, what else can I do? What can I plant in November following corn? There's only one choice, rye. What can I frost seed in the spring? Clovers. You can't. Somebody said, what about tiller radish? You plant tiller radish in the spring, it only gets the top, not the bottom. You got to plant that now. So now, the winter wheat guys, I don't disagree with them. Let's see if I could have a 3-system rotation, corn, beans, and winter wheat. The winter wheat, then plant her thick, kept conventional farmers. Now, then put your nitrogen on, spray your growth inhibitors, keep it short, put your fungicides on, so it's not things I wouldn't do, but they do, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Get your bumper crop. We got guys breaking 200 bushel wheat. Oh my gosh, 150 bushel wheat. So we're not going to have trouble feeding the world. We're going to have trouble people affording to buy that feeding if we don't destroy ourselves in the process. Shooting one another, we'll be fine. Because now the wheat is harvested right now. There's manures available, and you can put on your manures out here, because my grandson trucks chicken manure, and he's hauling manure every day down to Illinois on wheat fields. Now coming in with a cocktail mix. Now, choose and mix it what I want. So if I need phosphorus update, put some buckwheat in it. Oats and peas are my standards.
What buckwheat you'd plant right now?
Oh, it's a 60-day crop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Buckwheat.
Usually people talk about planting it in the spring.
Well, and if it looks like it's going to freeze, buckwheat decides to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right now, July is a good time. It's a 60-day crop.
Yeah.
And little winter kill. And it's the most fastest, most aggressive growing come out of the ground. And it's got, see, oats and buckwheat got something really in common. They got the most acidic roots of any plant. Buckwheat's got a 3.5 pH root. So my fertilizers are acidic. So why do you think oats and buckwheat grow on such low fertility soil? Because they got acidic roots. And they can pull the nutrients out of the soil. So say you go to out west, the pHs are 8, 7, 5, and 8. You aren't going to change those. It doesn't rain enough to wash anything out. Plant that's got an acidic root, and they bring up those minerals. And now they're in the carbon biological cycle. They're in that plant. They're not going to tie up anymore. When that plant breaks and rots down, it gives them up. If I had nematodes, I might want to plant some mustard. So I can plant a cocktail mix right now. But you know what that is for us? We could harvest our rye and do the same thing. One more tillage pass, one more planting pass, one more added cost. My son's not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the issues that I need to do that.
Would you ever try nowadays with the drones that would then broadcast a cocktail mix into standing corn, like around this time of the year?
Yeah, and you know what happens with farmers, and we're guilty of it too. I've tried all those things. Once you get a failure, it's not easy to do it again.
Yeah.
I said, just like if you start something, in the first couple of years is a home run. What we do now is foolproof. Planting the rye after corn, never fail.
Mm-hmm.
Brushing and clover in March, never fail. Right now, if we're bone dry here, it quit raining on us about a month ago, and it hasn't rained since. Right here, now 10 miles away it has a little bit. We're really dry. I'd say it doesn't rain for a month, and I just put that out with the drone. Guess what? I get nothing.
Yeah.
I get nothing. And not only that, some of those seeds need to be placed in the soil. And that article I just wrote for acres on cover crops, I'm talking about if you got thistle problems, how about a smothered crop? Sorghums and andgrass. If right now my wheat is off and I got thistle problems there, plant a really thick sorghums and andgrass crop. See, that'll come up on less moisture, but it does not no-till very well. A light surface scratching, give me some soil to put it in, or you lay things on top. So in the old days, I had a trial on my farm when I had field days for 25 years, and we had 15 different trials going on. And once the farmers now changed, I'm having a field days on the 13th again, and over here just because somebody wanted. I have nothing to show anymore because it's all done the same. And we've been at it for so long, my soils are not the same as when I started. I did corn and corn and corn for 10 years in a row. 1/3 of the field, corn, we had dairy, put manure on it. We planted corn with a more organic. It was a high nitrogen starter, and it had sulfur and things in it. Another third of the field, I didn't put any manure on, but I put urea on it, put nitrogen on it. And the other third of the field, I just used the starter and a cover crop. Now, we were at 38-inch rows. So what would happen if when the nitrogen, just corn on corn, and the cover crop didn't do well? Let's see, last year it was dry or something. Corn would be awful this year, but the cover crop would be gorgeous. And next year we'd have a bumper corn crop. Because 38-inch rows and the corn is small, the cover crop grew. Now, cover crops in corn and standing corn, I think in conventional corn, I think they only work for conventional or organic farms. I've done it so long, and we tried flying things on, we bulked better. See, time we get done cultivating, that last cultivation is now July. It's way too late to plant your cover crop, because now I can plant it in August, or the end of August, I could fly it on. I always wanted to develop a system for farmers. I've asked the question 100 times. Nobody's got an answer. When do I no longer need the leaves on this corn crop? Couldn't I go through there with a high boy with a bunch of bores and whack off the leaves, open up the sun, and place my cover crop into soil right now?
What machine would do that?
I know I have to make one.
Oh.
If we were in a juice,
That's why you need 12 kids. They go out and pull them out.
pull the leaves.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, they got the high boys that run the mowers down the road and see a conventional farmer plants end of April, first week of May in this part of the country. Middle of May, end of May, third week of May, middle of May, corn is this big. You go out there with the Rodale's got that, and State University, the thing that places your cover crop seed in the ground, and then place it in the ground and the corn is only this big. You got about a 95% chance it's going to work. And now it'll come out and be a beautiful cover crop. I was in some fields last year, even in the drought, it looked really good. And now, by the time we get done cultivating. We don't plant till the end of May. Time we get done cultivating, it's corn is knee high because that's the last cultivation. It's way too late to plant a cover. I can fly on rye in August. Might fly some tiller radish. Now we're going to do all our wet spots out here. We're going to put tiller radish in because they're wet spots and they need some aeration tubes, and hopefully that'll work. And we're going to plant oats and peas. And then, so I got the article. I pick out which cover crops would I use. And I think everybody says, see, I get myself in trouble a little bit because I say to the researchers, I say, in my lifetime, we've got it all figured out. We understand the minerals, we understand the biology, and we understand the physical. It's not about, you can't say, I'm going to no-till. No, you got to control air and water, and you got to manage the key emitters. Don Cheever. That was his story. That was 30 years when strip telling where he works at conference here next week. We understand it all. So if you're a researcher, you're going to say, well, what do you need me for? I don't. I need you for something, though. Why don't you tell me which cover, why don't we breed cover crops for specific reasons? Why don't we say, this cover crop here will bring up your phosphorus? Well, we know that mycorrhizae and buckwheat and oats can bring up phosphorus levels because they got acidic roots. But why don't we selectively breed some cover crops to fix certain conditions? We know mustard does, works for nematodes. It's a biofumigant. We know that. But I got to find out where it gets to the system. I'm not going to plant mustard. You might want to plant mustard. I pulled enough mustard when I was a kid. I'll never plant it. We had to walk those fields and pull that dumb mustard. You don't buy a yellow field on the way up to kill. That's today. That volunteer mustard.
Mustard in the corn?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you what you thought that was.
Yeah.
What is mustard?
What is that?
What is mustard? People plant this.
It's a brassica. And it gives off some compounds that really wipe out cyst nematodes in the soil. And they use it as biofumigant. Potato guys use it quite a bit of it. And they use it. There's a big company. I think they've been at Acres before out on state of Washington. I think they spoke at the conferences and they used to advertise in there, right? And they grow mustard and sell mustard as a biofumigant instead of putting on a fumigate. When you fumigate, you kill everybody. And then they want to add 2 things back, and it might be 2 million. They don't even know who they killed. How you know what they add back?
Yeah.
But biofumigant could work or a different location. See, it took me a long time to figure a couple of things out. I'm a slow learner. So I got old before I got it all figured out. Is the fact that plants determine the soil life. So that statement didn't pop in my head a long time ago. So why a diversity of plants? Diversity of soil life. The plants decide who lives and who dies. And so diversity out here. And then out of that, the plants decide not who they want to feed, but they also want certain minerals. So they'll address those minerals or feed certain ones to get those minerals. The picture that I got in the Acres article that I wrote is from a farm in Colorado that's got sandy soil, really low in sulfur. I took mustard plants. Hugh Lovell is another guy that was big acre. He's passed away. Now, he was a friend of mine. I traveled over to Australia with him. I show his graph in my article in there. But I was at a conference in Australia, and there was a permaculture conference. And they said the color in the flowers determines is a mineral thing. If you got yellow flowers, it's probably you're deficient on calcium, where it's a calcium. It's bringing up calcium. Dandelions. When you see dandelions really thick, you're probably low on available calcium. So mustard got a yellow flower. So I was in Colorado at this conference. I picked all those yellow flowers, and I sent them in for analysis. And sandy soil, low rainfall, very low sulfur, and the mustard plant came back, just like tiller radish, really high in sulfur. How did that mustard get sulfur when it was sandy soil without much sulfur in it? It's a 3-to-1 nitrogen to sulfuration. That's why it's a fumigant. That's why it's got just like tiller radish. They stink when they rot, just like sulfur rotting, because they take up a lot of sulfur. So those plants then can somehow figure through feeding biology to get the minerals they want. And that's why this diversity brings up all kinds of different minerals and feeds all kinds of different biology, and there's no one population takes over that. That's why that was. So our diversity here, we got the rye, and we got corn, and we got our 3-way clover mix, but we also are organic. We'll have some foxtail. We have some Pennsylvania smart. We have our rye revival meeting 2 years ago, and we went to a really nice rye field. And we went out there and we counted 20 species of plants that I didn't buy. They came on their own because they're weeds. Now this year, we got the best, cleanest corn we've ever grown on in a wet year. We're just kind of dumbfounded here. Our crops are just almost weed-free.
And what are your thoughts on why? Just because you're getting to the point of...
Last year, we didn't have success because it didn't rain. We need weed flushes. See, before we used to wait till the cover crop got so tall in the spring. We wanted to have it so it was bacteria food, not fungal food. I need to have soluble nutrients. I can't let it get mature, work it back into the ground, and expect my crop not to starve to death. So it's young and succulent, it's a foot tall. We turn it back in the ground. Now from here before there's the rye straw, the old dead roots, this clover that we clipped and left lay on the ground. There's a blanket about that thick on top of the ground out here right now. That's fungal food. That's mature plants. I want a young succulent green plant. So we turn that in and then we wait a week and then we get it mostly killed that first time. We make another pass and plant. Last year it never rained. So no weeds grew. The corn didn't grow either. And the rain came in July. Corn was too little and then the weeds just overtook our farm. This year it rained all the time. So which we started taking our cover crop down in the middle of May, 10th of May, I think we started. And then, of course, we started getting rain. And then all the weeds started growing. Then we did another pass. And what happened, all these tillage tools, I used to use rotavators, which are fine. I want something that can do a lot of killing without a lot of disturbance in the soil. So we got our high-speed discs. We got a Levkin, we got a coon grouch interceptor, but they leave the ground so rough. All those residues, they puke out piles. Now, coon grouch interceptors come up with a new tillage tool that should solve that problem. So at least they admit the problem existed. But the new one's $150,000. I'm sorry, we're going to keep our old.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went and bought a solid finisher, which we didn't want to make another pass. But we had a level of skills that you couldn't drive across. You couldn't rotary. You were speed bumps completely across our fields. So we took that solid finisher. So this year that it's raining. We took the cover crop down, made the second pass, and we got a little window. Then it rained again, and then we ran the salt finisher and planted. So we had 3 really good weed flushes. And there's always weed seeds in your soil. Fresh weed seeds are much more vigor and vitality because we had a huge wheat bank left over from last year. Not only that, my son quit spreading raw manure. See, chicken manure, we've composted all now. We used to spread raw manure on the sand.
Cook the seed.
So
Wheat
without
seeds.
raw manure, like putting on soluble fertilizer, we were feeding every so that manure's got weed seeds in it. I'm not so sure. They grind that chicken feed powder pipe. We run all our corn. We sell them all the corn. It goes through a grain cleaner. There aren't any weed seeds in it. There are very few. And of course, so chicken is all ground up. That's the raw manure feeds the weed seeds that are already in the soil. And so now it's all composted. So there's not enough soluble nutrients to feed those little weed seeds. And of course, there's dry enough. Turn time, we got a rotary hoe, but we have never had this good of weed control. Can we do it again next year? I have a farm, one field, 25-acre field. Now it's been 4 years since any weeds went to seed organically. You know, it's just not a weed on it again this year. And then last year it was rye with cover crop. Nothing went to seed there. No weeds went to seed. And the year before it was corn, not a weed in it. So are we going to get our viable weed seed bank lower? I'm convinced we are.
What are the biggest challenges you're seeing in this year with the rain that we're having? Cultivating?
Yeah, cultivators are challenging in there. So we can't be out there when we're doing till we got big equipment.
Yeah.
Compactions. And that's why they say, I'm going to be no-till. I mean, you're sinking in the ground and you're doing things out here. They're putting on nitrogen there. They're planting. And it's too wet. So we're going to do a lot of ripping. We might do some ripping, at least on wheel tracks. And then all these wet spots that we got flooded out. And we probably lost out of 6, 7, 75 acres of corn. We probably got 100 acres that are flooded out. So those will now, some are corn's yellow and short. The ground's really tight. Some of them still got water standing in them. Some of them. So this fall, I will run the rippers through those and see then the cover crops, we'll plant rye and so then we'll run our ripper through those fields. And so those wet spots, we're not going to just hope they take care of themselves. We're going to run our ripper through those. Down our hillsides and things, we got a lot of really nice looking crops too. We got our hillsides got the best corn we've ever had, and our good land's got the worst corn we ever had. It's underwater.
But that low land last year probably saved you.
Yeah, it saved us last year. And the hillside, what happened on the hillside last year was the cover crop didn't survive so well, but we're dead. And we got sand, but we got some nice soils on the hillside too. So that's why every year is going to be a little different. Now we're organic and we're really low input. So my son doesn't have an operating. Well, we don't need chemicals and such, especially no mining fertilizer to speak of. We spend.
So you don't buy fertilizer even though you
own the fertilizer company.
Yeah.
And then let me talk about it. Because if we don't give a farmer a dream and a hope, who's going to be as extreme as we are? That land that we transitioned for the Savannah Institute, it's underwater, by the way, 100 acres. The water table raises up a spring green. It's not that it flooded, it's sand. It's the water table got so high that all of a sudden the fields start getting underwater from the bottom up. And so it's a lake out there, all that water out in there. So where I was going with that thing. But so that soil out there, that's hard to farm that land. And it's lighter sandy soil. And we spent $1,000 an acre remineralizing that land. This is his first year organic crop. It's yes. Hinger. My son is in a position to afford it, but now we fixed it. We lined what he fixed. We had to line it pHs from low. We had to put on trace minerals. We had to put on some phosphorus. Potassium levels were fairly strong. So we did all that mineralization, and we grew cover crops for 2 years. We spent all that money fixing the soil, and now it's organic, and this year it flooded, so we don't get a return this year. And so it's spring rain building a ditch. Supposedly they did it from the airport by Lone Rock all the way down to a creek, and that land used to be underwater. The airport was underwater the last time we had this 08, we had all those wet years, and now it's not. That works. They just need to come another 5 miles down the road and get to our farm.
What are they waiting for?
How much taxes do you want to pay?
Less.
Less.
What, how much pressure did you get while you're growing a fertilizer business, but you're, talking about hopefully this dream to people where they won't need as much fertilizer in the future? How much pressure did you get internally?
Nothing really. Our whole plan, because we were scattered all around. Our whole thing was to get more farmers involved with it. Each farmer, I told them right up front, we go. See, what I did was, because farmers would say, oh, your fertilizer is expensive. And I said, wait a minute, if your soil was fixed, how much would I spend? Our soils are fixed. You know how much my son spends? $15 an acre. Don't tell me my fertilizer is expensive. I don't need it anymore. And we grow our own nitrogen. And this is unique. We don't make any money on the rye, so nobody's going to go to this extreme. Very profitable, very resilient, and our soils have really changed. So in the beginning then, I saw in order to get away from that story, your fertilizer is expensive, I got some soil tests right here. I'm going to meet with some people this afternoon. What's too low and what's too high? I mark out. So I said, the soil that we're going to do the soil corrections, I separate out from crop fertilizer. Anything they do to spend money on soil correction, once it's corrected, you don't need to keep doing it. So I'd say that's an investment, no different than buying a piece of equipment, no different than buying something. So invest your money in fixing it, knowing that you're going to be done with that unless you're selling hay and exporting a lot of stuff off your farm. And then the crop fertilizer, if you grow your cover, you can grow your nitrogen. It might be a starter fertilizer, it might be some nitrogen, but that's a different number. And the better your soils are, the more they're fixed. Now, sandy soils are hard to fix. You're always going to have an input cost. The better they're fixed, the less I had this. So I separate out soil correction and crop fertilizer. And that was really a gem for farmers to get their head wrapped around it. So this farm is fixed. We spent a lot of money fixing it over the years. And so now we get to enjoy it. See, way back in the 70s, sustainable ag came along. And that was the overcharged oil money that came along, which helped. Some people got really involved, and that money went into sustainable ag projects. Why didn't it sustain itself? Because nobody fixed the soil. They just quit buying fertilizer. And that did not work. It does not work today. So regenerating land is going to work on the guy that's been buying for the last 20 years too much fertilizer.
So I've heard criticisms, pretty much the only criticism I've ever heard of Midwestern BioAg. Some people will call it Midwest BioAg.
BioAg?
Midwest BioAg. You ever heard someone say that?
No.
So they claim that you were always pushing to buy the next greatest new thing. That's not what you're saying.
No. What we did is we spent over the years, and way back in the beginning when we started, I chose potassium sulfate K-Mag over potassium chloride. I chose MAP over DAP. I chose sulfate trace minerals over oxide trace minerals. I chose a biocal source over lime. I limed if the pH was low. Most guys don't have a low pH problem. So I had different sources. Then we came along with carbon-based fertilizers. Old Colonel Taylor, another guy from the centuries ago, used to advertise in acres all the time too. And I bought a semi-load of humates from New Mexico. And I spread them on the land, 1,000 pounds per acre of humates on this farm when we first bought our research farm. Zero response. So I'm an Australian. The book came out in 2000. I moved to Australia to get about humates. I said, I spread 1,000 pounds per acre. Never saw a thing. Some old boy raises his hand and he said, how much of that humate came in contact with the fertilizer you used? I got 2 million pounds of soil in the top 6 inches and I bulk spread 1,000 pounds per acre. What do you think? I said, probably none. So why don't you go home and do it over? Why don't you mix your humates with your fertilizer and see what happens? Oh my God, the light bulbs went on. I said, of course. So we bought a fertilizer. We bought a facility in Harvey, Iowa. We made humical and humiphos mixed humates with phosphorus. Thick rock phosphate mixed humates with it. Humates get a 3 pH. You put rock phosphate at a low pH so you get availability. So carbon-based fertilizers were the next step. Then we started mixing humates with everything. And then So the next phase, that's how over the years, everybody wanted me to sell liquid. So why don't you guys sell liquid for us? We're dry blenders, and dry is still the best buy for the dollar. I said, the reason we don't do liquid, everybody's selling liquid out here. Nature's, Alpine, you name them, Growers, there's a whole bunch of good liquid fertilizer companies out here, but they're all the same. Now, they might have a nickel difference here and there. I said, and there's already tons of people doing that. And then QLF came with the molasses. We can mix humus with fertilizers, and some people have done that. It's a good idea, but molasses, putting sugar to feed the biology with your fertilizer. And then they chose Tim Chitwood, the guy that you interviewed there. He used to be one of my consultants, you see, and that's how we got with QLF. He left us and went to them because we needed an insider, and I needed someone that really understood his thing. and they paid him more money than I was willing to. Oh, sorry, Tim. As life goes on. But in molasses, so that's how we got into the liquids, so molasses-based fertilizers. And now the next phase, the latest, greatest thing is the fact that we start making homogenized trace minerals with humus as compared to adding individual trace minerals. So there was a phase of fertilizer growing. So I brought on my 3 partners I started with. Fred passed away, and Don wanted to retire. And so I'm the last guy standing. Now what do? I spent 5 years trying to figure what to do with the company. Any investor would come along and say, can you grow this business tenfold in the next 5 years? And I said, you've got to be kidding me. It took me 35 years to get it where it is. And every time I get a new customer, I steal it from somebody and they say bad things about me. So I got introduced. I did a meeting in Idaho. And these guys from Utah State University came along with a little bag of fertilizer. And he handed it to me and said, could you sell this stuff? And I said, what is it? Fertilizer made on the back of an anaerobic digester. I said, really? And it 644 analysis. Now, the trouble was the analysis they had was wrong, and the price of making it was wrong. But I didn't know that. And I had farmers in Idaho ready to do it. And the guy I was going to work with was a veterinarian, and he was really into the thing. He got killed in the car. So we ended up in Fair Oaks, Indiana. We in this country, we're the only country I know of on the planet that's allowed this to happen. We got all those mega farms. And with way too much manure. I always talk about, water and money got a lot of things in common. Now I got to throw manure in the same story. There's plenty of it, but distribution's off. Water, money, and manure. So now you can't truck that liquid. How far are you going to haul manure from these big farms? And they all put on so mega doses. The farm that I live near, I said, you're allowed to put on 5,000 gallons or 10,000 gallons of liquid manure per acre. It runs over the hoses when they drag it on. It's 4 inches thick. How many gallons do you think that is? Nobody's watching. But they're just dumping it, So why now? And it's really costly. A 4,000 cow dairy farm spends $1.5 million just to clean manure every year. Why not? They're anaerobic digesters on. Make energy, and you stop coming out of the digester then, process it down to make fertilizer, just like those guys from Utah State University showed me that little bag. So that's what started the investor thing. That's how we built the facilities in Fair Oaks, Indiana. Originally, it was going to be on a hog operation, but hog and chicken manure, isn't the ideal thing. It's corn and soybeans run through a hog or a chicken. The cow's got a fermentation of that. It's already being digested. Feeds the cow for 24 to 48 hours and digested for 3 weeks. What's left? Dead bodies of bugs. The energy's gone. They made methane out of it. What's left is of dead bodies of bugs and all the properties of biological properties. And then there's some minerals in it. So then the nitrogen and the potassium were in the liquid sides more so, and the phosphorus, then we got into the dries. And so we got that cake then, and we added other minerals to it and started making fertilizers in Fair Oaks in it. And now I realize we've had our challenges, and we still have challenges. But the new ones that are coming online are going to be totally different. First mulch never gets to cheese, and I don't want to be the first mulch anymore. And so people can copy it. So we got all that we can make as far as sold, and most of it goes from Fair Oaks, Indiana to North Dakota. We get yield increases on wheat that are unbelievable. North Dakota, pHs of 8, low rainfall, heavy soils, and they buy fertilizer like MAP and DAP. They put on all kinds of fertilizer. And we went out there and reduced the amount of fertilizer by half of what they were putting on phosphorus, and had a minimum of 10 bushel yield increase the first year. So 20, 30 bushel yield increases. We have the highest yield on the 5 major crops in North Dakota by putting a biological with that phosphorus, because he had 8 pHs, mycorrhizae doesn't live. They're already no-till farmers. That's what they do. They farm 35,000 acres. He cleaned us out of our fertilizer last year. 50 at 100 pounds an acre right down the tubes on wheat, and you'll get a huge wheat response, even at the prices of wheat today. So now we need to have those built all on this countryside. That's going to happen. I hate it to be the first. Other people are going to copy it, of course. And so now we can solve those manure problems. We can get those manure problems scattered around by making fertilizer out of it. So that's the progressions of the fertilizer industry at Midwestern BioAg. Now we got into liquid. That's how we got into the manufacturing. So the bag changed over the years. First it was, like I said, ingredients, and then it became carbon-based, and now it became biological-based in carbon.
Well, anything else that would be good for people to hear about the beginnings of Midwestern BioAg?
Yeah, I know in the beginnings it was really it was interesting times because we had all these small family dairy farms, and it was, as you get to them, because either they had problems or things, and we couldn't service the big farms at that time anyway. I think some of the sad things that took place in my life, we got all these mega farms right now, and everything is bid out and bought cheap, and it's volume, and there's a lot less reverence to the land and the mind of the farmers. It's now business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad. When the old days, I don't know if I can start BioAg again with the mentality we got today. Now there's going to be products. And that's why now it became a product set. They're all looking for biologicals. They're all looking for ways to get more effective, but they don't know how to do it. Education's got to be a really big part of it. And we got a really good group of people at BioAg. And so we were always based on education. See, because I was such a different method of farming. I just couldn't sell a product at twice the money of another guy selling something that they thought was similar. So I had to educate the farmers. And that's why I write the books. That's why I did all this education. It's because it took knowledge to change. Well, now that knowledge is in a lot of places out here, which is really good to see.
That's the key to the business, is you educated, and then people came wanting what you're educating.
And I am still cautious about this regeneration and no minerals. It's just annoying to me. The fact that, some people maybe don't need to use minerals, but there's certain ones we do need to use. And so I realize that eventually they're going to, if I get against them on the farm, I'm going to beat them up if they don't look out. Now, I really get too old to beat up too many people.
You a big fighter back in the day?
Oh, God. You know, I got a conferences. Oh, God. Some were really cute. I went up against professors. We spoke at a potato conference in central Wisconsin. There were 10 people on the panel. They were all professors and scientists and researchers now, but I got to me and they passed the microphone down and I said, well, I'm a dairy nutritionist. I certainly have no bad habits. 75% of the questions came to me.
Yeah.
I had no bad habits. I'm not a potato guy. I had another angle they had not looked at before. I know I was up in Canada. I never forget it because we had a session up there. I offended them because I'm saying something that they didn't, whatever it was. And he said, I know you got to have an open mind, Zimmer. He said, but not such an open mind that the wind blows through. Yes, I've been attacked by a wall. The only way you can overcome a touting.
Yeah.
Nobody had more knowledge than I made darn sure I was better educated. I don't care if you have a PhD. You're really smart in one area. There was a guy who used to be entomology professor at the University of Wisconsin, Dale Norris, and I went to his office. He always looked at the ceiling, I think, things you've written on the roof when you talk to him. And he said, I am such an expert on one thing that I now know nothing. There's a lot of truth to that. You study one bug your whole life, you really don't know anything.
Yeah.
I studied the system.
You studied the system and you practiced it.
Yeah, and then they tried. I had the state of Wisconsin try to come after us, and because it was hard to blame some of our fertilizers, they took samples to make sure they got the analysis. And I said to the guys, I said, "Come on." I said, you don't need to keep harassing me. I said, if the farmers are complaining about me and they're telling you that I'm stealing their money and I'm really hurting the farmers out here, lock me up. If you lock me up now, I'm going to call the press because I think they need to know what's going on here. And then the guy that was after me for the state of Wisconsin, it was really thought, it was over our county agent way back years ago. And the county agent's brothers are organic farmers. And they thought there was issues. Now, recently they said to me, not recently in the last 10 years, that we should have listened to you and not our brother and followed you years ago. He finally came to me and he said, you're pretty popular out here. And that was the end. Passion. If we ever heard farmers, they had a right to lock me up. But I was helping them.
Yeah. What do you think, what are you going to talk about in Madison this year at the conference?
It's the same. I guess I'm at this stage in my life. All the things we've been talking about here, I like to talk about systems. And I like to know about what it takes to make a system work. And I know there's a lot of specifics. A lot of people want to get down to the little specifics. I'm not saying they shouldn't have or don't have their place. I think like at Acres, how do we attract more farms to this thing to get more conventional farms, they're receptive and looking for ideas. I think you're doing the podcast and all the things you're doing out here helps to get to more of them. And I think we got to start. I want to focus on systems here and see what kind of a system would I have if I'm a grazer? What kind of a system I have if I'm a corn and bean farmer? What kind of a system would I have if I'm an organic farm?
What is Acres conferences? What's the importance of them in the previous years? What's the importance of people actually being there in person instead of
There was my two favorite conferences, and Acres was always on the top because I got to speak to them before Moses came along. Now, what we'll see is the fact that the people that were there and the ideas and the context, they're from all over the planet. And right now, the numbers may be down. There might be less foreign travelers, but farming has changed. We don't have near the small family farms on here, but you're going to talk to people and meet people outside of the world tree. And just like the researchers and the people that talk, look at the concepts that got introduced at Acres, even with James White, even with the liquid carbon. And there's some new ones coming on board right now that people, need to look at, whether it be, and things that took place out here, this soil biology. I got introduced to it. Yes, if the story got wrong, but we have to be fungal dominated. That was a dumb idea. But the fact that we focused on soil biology, I never understood at that point in my life why corn never did as well as corn, fallow, and alfalfa. It was a biological thing. It wasn't minerals. We could have done that. They did done as well. It was a biological thing. So I think all the ideas that not only certain specific classes and things, but there's also the people that came here. And it's like going to my field days. I did them for 25 years. And we had as many as 1,000 people show up. And what the comment was, this was an event that farmers aren't around complaining about the price or anything else. They're here having a good time and interacting with other people. And we had our trainings and our educational things. And I think sometimes you need to be pumped up a little bit about things. Others say, oh, God, am I making a mistake in the direction I'm going? But you get around people, other people have done it in other parts of the world. It's not just you. It's not just this. It's the whole change on farming system. I think it's what Acres brought to a lot of people. And I know it needs to be regenerated now. I think you're doing a really good job at that. And I understand the hurdles in the way. And that's why I do everything I can to promote that along. And I see you got a nice group of speakers, I think, again, coming this year here. But I'll gladly present with anything anybody wants me to present on. I do a lot of meetings on soil health out here for NRCS, and I do them across Minnesota and Iowa, and I'm down in Illinois this year. I'm at the Guelph Conference. I'm doing conferences out here where I think I present. I think what I bring to the table is the fact that way back years ago, I think I mentioned that there's other tapes we've done, is the fact that I spent a lot of years educating myself. But then I also got into farming because I didn't want to be telling someone how to do it, just like you. When you get all done with your farm, you're going to have a different story to tell on rotational grazing than if you didn't farm at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's valuable. See, I farm myself. And yes, it's specific. And yes, it's organic. But that doesn't mean I've worked with a lot of farmers. I understand all the others too. I've done with it. At least I bring that to my table that I've actually done it, along with taught it, along with wrote about it.
Well, it is important.
It is important.
Because I don't think a lot of people, they shut their ears off if you're not actually out there doing it with them.
Yeah. That's why I think the university struggles with, some of those people, 60% of the people are now getting a degree at the university to become a professor and never been on a farm. 60% of them. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
There's some really good ones, don't get me wrong, but they're so good at one thing, they might not see the system.
I went to a presentation where university folks came and were, I guess, a little bit preachy to the crowd, and it was a crowd full of farmers, and they did the math and they showed these charts on rotational grazing, but you could tell it was just math that was made up in a computer, and it's like that math is already wrong, because if 2 years ago you could have bought those stockers at what it was, but now it's not that.
And that was why
it was an interest. They got interesting feedback from the room.
One of your presenters at your little thing about rotational grazing, it was, I read rotational grazing done right, and you got to rotate. You can't just set shot graze, because we know damn well that doesn't work. Then you got to know some of the principles, and I'd like to throw a little more minerals involved and a little better balance of plants out there, and have some intervention with that. But you have a chart that say, here's the only way we build soils. That then down below is all that. And I'm sorry, that's university data on different farming systems. I didn't see a single one was a good biological farm. I'll challenge anybody on soil building and soil structures. And yes, we don't have livestock.
Yeah.
Don't tell me it can't be done and I have to have livestock to make it work. That's ridiculous. You haven't lived long enough and traveled far enough, I do.
Well, this is a good episode, Gary. Let's go take a look at a couple of these fields that we have.
Yeah, I would like to.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Kennedy Stroessel and Weston Larson of Acres USA. And we're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experience.